So that rent has grown from £550 in 2016 to £1,000 a month in 2022. Why? Hello and welcome, Mark Homer here. I'm going to talk today about rent, how you're managing your residential rents, rent rises, and where I see the rental market at the moment. We're in my office. You can see some of our developments behind. This is where I manage our portfolio, and yes, it's the Nerve Centre. So we've done a number of projects over the last few years. Just finished another building with 39 tenants in it, where we let the ground floor to the local college. They're just building that out. And yeah, we're just finishing off a few of the rooms and a few other little bits. So just before we get started, make sure you like, subscribe and hit the notification button. So I got involved in Peterborough in the private residential sector, renting out little houses and flats in around 2005. Little 3-bed, ex-council, would have rented for about £450 a month. If you fast forward to 2016, that was probably about £550. So rents hadn't even kept in pace with inflation. There'd have been lots of landlords added to the sector, and because of all the supply, I think the tenants in many ways had, they'd got properties at good rental levels, which in many cases were cheaper than going and buying and paying a mortgage. So it was quite attractive. 2016, George Osborne comes along and starts with his populist policies, and they introduce Section 24, which is the inability to offset all of the mortgage interest against the rent, and increase the stamp duty on residential rental properties. So some landlords were deterred from buying properties to rent out, and also some landlords left the sector. So the sector then didn't grow at the same rate. Clearly there are more and more people that need to rent properties, so the private rented sector just hasn't kept pace. The response to that is that by 2018, rents were probably on the same property, probably more like £750. Not that long ago, sort of pandemic time, little 3-bed might have been £850. We put one on 3-4 weeks ago. We had 30 inquiries, and the tenants are now paying £1,000 a month. So that rent has grown from £550 in 2016 to £1,000 a month in 2022. Why? Well, it's basic economics that if you reduce the supply of something, as the government have done with the sort of anti-landlord policies, then you're going to increase the price of it. Clearly, there's been demand increases at the same time, but it's just basic economics. I'm sure they knew this stuff. There are clever people in the Treasury. I'm sure they, provided an impact assessment, and MP still went ahead and did it because it was popular, and they probably thought that this would vote them in. It doesn't really benefit the tenants. Lots of other things have happened in the meantime. Central governments have allowed local councils to introduce licensing schemes which are quite profitable for them. So they're not just charging a fee to cover the cost of licensing, they're actually making money out of it. And there's been lots of other landlord legislation and extra costs which have been introduced. This cost, at the time, they were sort of told this cost would go in one direction eventually, because as you reduce the supply of these rented properties, because landlords could have sort of say, can't afford this cost, they go, and the landlords are there saying, okay, if we're going to carry on, we're going to have to pass this cost on to the tenant. So all that's happening is rents are going up and up and up. We have to sort of frame this and think back in 2005 when I started, that little rental property was £450. And what have the rent rises, and of course the value in sort of residential properties, what has that been over that full period from 2005 to 2022, where the rents went from £450 a month to about £1,000 a month. So there is that to sort of consider, because of course it doesn't go in a straight line, does it? The last people see what's happened in the last few years and go, oh, rents have gone absolutely crazy, but maybe to some extent they are catching up. But, there's a sort of wider piece here. But clearly what's been happening with the sort of anti-landlord stuff and the bashing, you know, this is showing up in rent rises. I know Nicola Sturgeon introduced a rent freeze over the winter, and I understand a flat came on in Edinburgh and there was something like 300 inquiries for one flat. She's probably just introduced the rent freeze until the spring, and after that then the landlords are obviously going to have to put rents up, you know, to cover their increased costs. So what she's actually done is introduced uncertainty into the market. Some landlords are sort of going, my God, if there's going to be rent control, this is an indication of what could happen in the future. They'll have left the sector. Again, less supply. So, you know, I used to really worry about landlord bashing and the government being so anti, but over a period of time, once you've been in business for a few years, you realise that if it's just economics, that, you know, governments and other people can do certain things to cause you issues, but all it will do is reduce the supply, and then the price of what you're offering, your product, will have to go up. Might take a few years, but when you've seen it, as we're seeing now, you know, and you hang in there and you hang in there for the long run, you realise actually you will be paid in the long run for this extra stuff, and you'll be able to cover your costs and again make a profit. So yeah, just always remember that when there are issues. And that brings me on to the latest set of challenges that we're trying to work our way through as landlords. Obviously interest rates have gone up and are expected to go up maybe another, well, the market probably believes they're going up around 1.5% to 2%, but the likes of Lloyds, Barclays, and even the governor of the Bank of England think it's going to be quite a bit less than that. Maybe terminal base rate's going to get to 4%, so that means interest rates maybe have got another 1% to go up. Who knows what that's going to be, but the point is we were paying 0.1% not long ago base rate, and base rate is now 3%. So, you know, most mortgages, you know, if you've got a rental property, will, instead of being, say, 2.5%, 3%, they're already 5%. You know, I'm seeing rates of 5%, 6%. You know, you've got a HMO property, it could be 7%. You know, they are more money. So rents are going up. Are they going to go up more? Well, I had a look a couple of days ago at the latest survey from RICS. The surveyors all sort of report in. They're saying the sales market is absolutely dead. So, you know, and this is RICS. This is, you know, even sort of local estate agents I'm talking to, you know, they are saying it's dead. And for agents to say that, you know, there's usually a bit of bullshit, you know, that sort of they tend to like trying to encourage people to buy. So, you know, the sales market is definitely dead. But, you know, RICS are saying the rental market is about as strong as it's been, and they expect rents to rise further. So, yes, interest rates are going up, it's a concern, but the rents are going up because there is less supply. And clearly, lots of people who were going to buy can't now because it's unaffordable. Maybe the bank won't lend them the money, so they end up in the private rented sector. So there is more demand from people who were going to buy and now need to rent. So your interest payments are going up, but you know, you've got the opportunity to increase rents. And the other challenge, obviously, HMO landlords and those landlords that are paying gas and electric for their tenants have had huge increases. I think electric and gas has settled somewhere around 300% increase from 2019. So electric, I think on the cap is 34p a kilowatt, and gas is about 10.5, 11, whereas electric was maybe 11, 12, 13. 2019, and gas was probably 3.5. So it's something like 300% increase. So I've mentioned I'm putting heating controls in. Prefect's a good company to look at. Heating controls in all the bedrooms. Just means when a tenant's not in the bedroom, it knocks the heating back. If they open a window, it knocks the heating back. There's a PIR sort of infrared sensors, and it also reports issues with the heating system. So it can, you know, it's quite good from a customer service point of view. But clearly, you've got the ability now with HMOs. We've noticed HMO rooms are really going up now. They weren't, but they've really started rising, and we've been putting rents up. So I've got quite a few properties where I wouldn't have. They were, in many ways, they were severely under rented. You know, I'd had people in for a number of years. Maybe I've been a bit sort of sentimental, sort of say, oh, they've been there a while, won't push the rent up too much, because interest rates were low and my costs were not really going up that much. But now there's no choice, and there's a couple of other things all colliding to sort of I don't know, bring these rent rises to a head. And I'm just going to sort of explain why I think now is the time that you need to push these rent rises through, why they are more and more important now, and why I've really been focusing on them. So the first thing is, clearly your costs are going up significantly. They're going to go up further in terms of interest, mortgage interest, and then on HMOs, gas and electric. So you need to get ahead of this because as your costs increase, clearly if the rents don't go up, you may end up making a loss. And if you make losses, then you're going to end up either getting repossessed or you're going to have to sell the property and the tenant's going to have to leave. So you've really got to focus on these rent rises, and I think now's the time. A couple of reasons why it is a good idea to keep the rents going up along with the market. I never push them up to market rate. Probably keep them 5% below because that's an incentive for the tenants to stay, and makes it sort of a little bit cheaper for them, which is obviously great. Clearly, when you get a tenant changeover, that's not good for them or for you. It's quite costly. So you do want an incentive, to encourage your tenants to stay. But I think the little and often methodology is good for a number of reasons. The first thing is you can obviously issue a Section 13 on a yearly basis, which is a rent rise of a maximum 5%. So if you let your rents get really out of kilter, say you're taking £500 a month on a property that's worth £1,000, well, you can only then increase the rents at 5% a year. So it could take you many years to catch up, if you ever catch up, which could cause you a major issue. Is your portfolio then going to be profitable? Can you make it a sustainable portfolio on that basis? So I think the little and often is quite important. Clearly, if a tenant was paying £500 a month and they've suddenly got to pay £1,000 a month, that's going to be quite unaffordable. Tenants haven't got the chance and the time to adjust, so that's not fair on them either. So if you haven't increased them for a while, I think start moving on. The Section 13 is obviously useful for that purpose. The other thing that is bringing this all to a head, and a big reason as to why now is the time, is because there's been talk for a while that the Section 21 is going to get repealed. And of course the Section 21 notice is basically you saying, I want the property back for whatever reason. Now, if they remove that and you only have the ability then to increase rents by 5% with the Section 21, or you Section 8 because they're not paying rent or antisocial or whatever, your hands are going to be tied and you could be severely under rented with your portfolio. So, you've got a period now where the Section 21 is there. If you've got to put a rent increase through, tenant says they can't pay it, don't want to pay it, and just sort of sit there. Well, you've always got the Section 21 where you sort of say, well, you can't afford to live in this property. I can't afford to pay my mortgage and my costs with you here. Here's the Section 21. You're going to have to leave and move to a property that you can afford, because there are obviously lots of other tenants that can afford to pay that, and they will pay that. So you could use a Section 20. You could suggest that the Section 21 is there, and you may have to issue that if the tenant doesn't agree to sort of rent rises over a period of time. Don't suddenly hit them with a massive rent rise that's unaffordable, but maybe agree a plan over a period of time to get the rent more like to market rate, because I suppose in the end, if you're going to have a sustainable portfolio, one that is going to be compliant, where tenants have got long-term homes, you need to be able to cover your costs and God, that dirty word, make a bit of a profit. I think now is the time, and I think it's very important that you work on these. And there's a lot of demand at the moment, and you've got the ability to increase these rents to offset this increase in costs. So I think rents are going to carry on going up. Ricks certainly think that they will. You know, we're not suddenly going to see the sales market recover, you know, unless inflation fell off a cliff and interest rate expectations dropped. You know, I think this is going to carry on for a while. We've just learned that the last 3 months were negative for GDP, so the economy was getting smaller over the last 3 months. If that happens again for the next 3 months, then we'll be in recession. I think we're already in recession. We just haven't got the data yet. I think that's quite a high likelihood. So, you know, there's going to be less people buying houses now, plus they expect them to drop in value. So lots of people will be saying, well, why would I buy now if, you know, they're dropping? So I may as well buy in a year's time when they're going to be cheaper. So, you know, the affordability to buy houses now has really been smashed up since interest rates has got up. The interest rates have gone up and are expected to go up further. So it's like a seesaw. When more people are buying properties to live in, generally the rental market can be a bit quieter. And when there are less people buying properties, generally the rental market is busier. It doesn't always work like that, but that is often how it works, a bit of a seesaw. So I think you know, it's sort of buying and sales winter, and it's rental summer. So you know, work on your rents. I think they're gonna carry on going up. You know, with our rooms, we're seeing, you know, let's say rooms we brought on at 500, 550 in 2015, 16. They're all now sort of 650, 675. You know, if we get kitchenettes in them, a little bit more. What I tend to do is, if an old tenant's gone, I sort of give it a bit of titivation, you know, paint the walls, you know, put a nice feature wall in, maybe change the flooring. It often gives it a good boost, and we're on to the next sort of rental zone. So, yeah, I think the sales market is going to continue, the values of properties are going to continue to drop, and the rents are going to continue to go up. So the yields are just going to go up and up. They have to do. They have to reset because interest costs on debt are going up. So, of course, yields have got to grow. And the two ways that yields grow are rents going up and capital values coming down. That's what's happening. Just economics. I do think that the government have betrayed both landlords and tenants at the same time. You know, they gave a lot of landlords a lot of worry, sort of 2016. I'm sure the sort of leftists were quite pleased about that. Jeremy Corbyn and his merry men got very excited. I wonder if Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell actually care a jot about tenants, because we can see what's happened with this disastrous policy. And yeah, prior to that, you know, you saw rent control. You know, prior to Margaret Thatcher, prior to the Housing Act of the late 80s, there were loads and loads. The private rented properties got into a terrible state because there was, you know, rent control, and there weren't new landlords coming in, and no one wanted to do it, or less landlords wanted to do it. So I think they definitely betrayed both the landlords and the tenants. Lots of tenants go, oh yeah, this is great, we're going to bash the landlords, we're going to, you know, make them pay more tax, yeah, make them, where does that extra tax come from? Well, the landlords have to take it from the tenants and give it to the government. You know, where does the extra cost for, you know, Legionella certificates and sort of all this extra profit that councils are making out of selective licensing and all of these, you know, all this extra legislation and hoops, you know, right to rent checks and, you know, checking the immigration status of tenants and all this other stuff, you know, banning tenants' fees that you know, sort of the government's done. All that happens is it goes into the rent, the tenants end up paying it. That's not fair. You know, they're sort of explaining it in one way, but in reality, they're taking the money in another way, in the form of tax, you know, and extra red tape. So this sort of time where the market is falling, where there's likely to be more and more deals, you know, I'll probably be chastised for saying this. It's not great, clearly, for lots of people. Lots of people are, you know, struggling in terms of not being able to pay their bills, and you know, it's not great for us in terms of our portfolio because it goes down in values and down in value. Maybe, you know, we get some issues with some banks potentially. But this offers usually the biggest buying opportunity. I remember 2008, 2009, 2010, you know, the deals that we did in those years are the best deals that sit in our portfolio now, bar one actually, which I did later. But, you know, the stuff that gets bought in the next, you know, maybe not right today, but, you know, in the next few months, the stuff that gets bought, it will look very, very cheap. You know, as long as you buy well and you go out and you're really aggressive with your viewings and you get your sort of agent book going. This is the time. You make your money when you buy often in a depressed market. You know, I usually become a lot more acquisitive. I get into purchasing a lot more during periods like this. There are my thoughts. Tell me what you think down in the comments. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you've enjoyed this video and you want to learn more, there is a free report down below. Go and download it now and start to learn how to make big money. It's been Mark Homer, over and out.